How many of you have joined that class regarding
Yes,
the,
sir.
is it okay? As talked about the mycotoxin also, like aflatoxin, aflatoxin, all those. Up to that, I think we have concluded. Then only few diseases are left. I dropped that part intentionally, just keeping the more importance on the viral diseases. I thought that you can cover up with the notes. As we have enough time with us, let us continue. So today, I'll try to cover up two diseases. Let me share the slide. Is it okay? Visible? Can you see my slides?
Yes, sir.
Fine. So today we will discuss two diseases. One is histoplasmosis, another is the blastomycosis. If I'll try to remember back when we have read about the fungi, their morphology, classification, all those things. Initially, we told they are a group of fungi which are also known as dimorphic fungi. Dimorphic in that sense, those fungi can appear in two different forms. One is yeast form, another is the mold form, depending upon the temperature variation. So when the temperature remains 37 degrees centigrade or our body temperature, in that temperature, this group of fungi, it appears like a yeast. Means you grow in the room temperature like 25 to 30 degrees centigrade variation, there they appear as a mold, means multicellular hyphae. So mostly those, all the name of the dimorphic fungi, let me say example like Histoplasma capsulatum, then we said Coccidioides immitis. So all those fungi are pathogenic in nature. So here today we will talk about two fungi of that category. One is the Histoplasma, another is Blastomyces. Both they are dimorphic fungi and it causes the disease in both human as well as animal. So we'll try to focus only on the animal diseases. Is it okay? So the first disease, this is the histoplasmosis. Histoplasmosis. So the causative agent, as the name mentioned, it is the intracellular dimorphic fungus Var capsulatum. Here one, the name, it might be little bit confusing about you. First is the genus, it is a species. Earlier book or old book, you probably will get the term Histoplasma capsulatum, but this Var and capsulatum, it is not there. But with the advancement of the scientific knowledge, now it has been observed that this genus Histoplasma, it has the pathogenic species capsulatum, and then there are lots of variation. So this is Var indicates the variation. So there are many variations. One more variation I'll talk after within this topic also. One of the variation, which is the capsulatum, Var capsulatum, it causes disease in human and animals, and it is known as histoplasmosis. Then another variation is there. This is known as Histoplasma capsulatum var farcinosum. Farcinosum, it causes pseudoglanders or lymphangitis in case of horse, mule, donkey, camel, etc. I am coming with that. So let us know about the organism first. So Histoplasma capsulatum, this is the species. It has many variations. The variation capsulatum, Histoplasma capsulatum var capsulatum, it causes histoplasmosis in man and animal. It's basically a disease of pulmonary. Pulmonary means respiratory tract, mostly infected, and occasionally it is a fatal disease, means animal may, but it disseminates within the animal very, very fast, means from one organ to another one, it rapids very fast. What happens, as I have mentioned, that they grow intracellularly. The target cell, mostly the mononuclear phagocyte, particularly the macrophages, neutrophil, they are the target cells. So it affects the reticuloendothelial cells, mostly the phagocytes, and it causes the disseminated kind of disease. Among the animal, dog is the most susceptible animal. I'm not talking about the human. Among the animals, dog is most susceptible. The disease was first described or identified by Richard Darling. So that's why the disease is also known as Darling disease. Let's understand a little bit how the disease spreads, the epidemiology, how do they transmit. Two species, subspecies or a variation I have mentioned. One is the Furciminosum, one is Capsulatum. Histoplasma furciminosum, it is a pathogen Equidae and Camelidae family. Equidae means horse, mule, donkey, as well as camel. So those animals generally they get the infection by nasal or ocular secretions, contaminated fomites, then the grooming utensils, feeding utensils, watering utensils. Sometimes the flies and ticks that also transmit the organism. But Histoplasma capsulatum, which causes the histoplasmosis in animal, it transmits only by inhalation and ingestion, but not through wound contamination. This disease is generally not a zoonotic disease. There is no transmission between the human or between the animal. What happens? The organisms, Histoplasma capsulatum, these organisms are very much available in the soil and in the environment. Generally, it has found that Histoplasma capsulatum, their spores or their hyphae or the fragments, they are available within few centimeters of our soil depth inside, and they can sustain very amicably with other organisms. So non-competitive organism it is. So whenever we handle or we do some of them they're doing gardening, plowing, or anything, when we handle with the soils, we can inhale it or ingest it. So by that way, the animal and human gets infection. But the infection means human to human transmission not available. Animal to animal transmission does not happen. So whenever the animal or human gets infection, it directly comes from environment. So there should be some of the history of that. Disease, let us concentrate about the disease in animals, and particularly the histoplasmosis. It is important disease for dog. So what happened? Whenever the dog appears or dog comes with certain lesions, we need to take care of that. What happens? Clinically, the infection develops only in a very few of the total number of animals. Means there may be many infected animals, but symptoms may appear with a very few numbers. Very few numbers of animals, they show symptoms, even less than 10%. Other than dog, generally, other animal, they do not show the symptom. There is subclinical infection. Sometimes cat may get infection. So they don't show subclinical infection. If we observe the animal, particularly the dog, what happens? There are mostly major 4 symptoms you can find. People may come, the owner may come to you that the dog is having a chronic cough continuously for a long period of time. The cough is going on. There is gradual weight loss, persistent or intermittent diarrhea, and irregular type of pyrexia or fever. Then sometimes fever comes, it disappears. It may come back after 7 days, 15 days, or it may be 10 days. So that kind of symptom. But my dear, if you look carefully, all the symptoms, whatever it is mentioned here, it is quite routine. Means many of the diseases, there may be chance of the fever, there may be chance of the cough, there is weight loss. But if we observe them for a quite long period of time, that cough is not subsiding for a long time. Animal is gradually weighting loss even after providing sufficient nutrition supplement. And diarrhea it's going on. It may not be very acute, it may not be very severe, but light intermittent diarrhea is there. And pyrexia means fever does not have any regularity. Sometimes fever appears on the consecutive 2 days, maybe after 4 days, sometimes maybe after 10 days, like that way. irregular type of pyrexia. So in all the cases, being a veterinarian, we need to be careful about that. We need to suspect about the histoplasmosis. All are okay. All are. Can you listen me?
Yes, sir.
Sir, slides are not changing, I think.
Not changing? Then why not you are telling it? Which slide you have seen?
So only the first one.
First one. Oh my God. There it was. Now is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so better option is that I should not go for the full screen presentation mode. If this screen is visible, let me try to make it little, zoom it out. And so, okay, look at that now, it is little bit better, because if I go for the presentation mode, it is not moving. It is happening. Is it okay? So already I talked about the epidemiological picture, means the how the organism transmit among the animals or human. Let me repeat it back. Two subspecies or variation are already there. One is Histoplasma capsulatum, another is Histoplasma farciminosum. Histoplasma capsulatum, they transmit by inhalation, ingestion. Okay, but Histoplasma farciminosum, generally it acquires by the animal through wound infection, means it may get in through oral or nasal route, either by secretion, contaminated fomites, contaminated utensils, feeding utensils, watering utensils, sometimes flies, like the house fly, Musca domestica, and some of the ticks, they can also transmit the disease. Interesting fact is that the disease does not transmit human to human or animal to human animal. Even animal to human means the zoonotic potential also not very high for this pathogen. But most of the cases, pathogen directly acquire from the environment. The clinical condition, already I have tried to mention that clinical condition, generally the dogs are more susceptible, but the other pet animals like cat also. But in other animals other than dog, they do not show the clinical symptoms. Mostly they remain subclinical. If the animal is visible, they show different kind of symptoms like chronic cough. Right now I talked about gradual weight loss, so it is losing weight, and persistent or intermittent diarrhea, irregular pyrexia. So all those symptoms are suggestive of the histoplasmosis. But in case of the camels or the equines, the disease is known as epizootic lymphangitis or pseudoglandar. Already you read glandars in case of the horse. So glandar, what happens? It is the disease of lymphatic channels and lymphonoids. So what happens? The lymph nodes and lymphatic channels, they get corrugated or the swollen. Pus may be deposited there. So based upon that, as the disease is looking like glandars, so that's why it is known as pseudoglandars. Similar type of infection, but this time the pathogen is Histoplasma capsulatum var farciminosum. When it happens, generally the lesions are confined to the skin, subcutaneous tissue, and lymph vessels as well as lymph node. So here, if you look at these animals, the horse, the four legs, the lymphatic channels, there are continuous corrugation, thickening of the lymphatic channels. Then there is abscess formation. It gets ruptured. Then pus is released, and those pus, it contains huge quantity of the organism. And because of that, when this organism, it can go by some mechanical way to another animal, that animal also can get infected. Same epidemiology, just like the glandars. Glandars also highly infectious disease. Means if one animal or gland is suffering from glandar, and if it appears the pus is oozing out, and flies are sitting on it, so they can infect immediately the other healthy animals because flies are carrying the organism. Okay, so number two, but Histoplasma falciparum, these have the zoonotic potential, means human being can get infection of this Histoplasma falciparum, not Histoplasma capsulatum. All right. So this is a very continuous chronic disease. It causes the cording of the lymphatic channels, particularly neck and limb area. So this is the area where the lymphatic channels get affected. Then after that, when it matures, it causes the secretion of the thick, creamy color pus that contain large number of yeast cells. The same, all right? And this is the source of infection for the other healthy animals. So how can we diagnose this disease in the laboratory? So first of all, in either case, if you are thinking about the pseudoglanders or even if the histoplasmosis in canine, of the cases, we need to have some of the historical evidence and the clinical manifestations that should be recorded very, very clearly. After that, if we want to test it in the laboratory, first we can observe the direct microscopic examination. In case of the Histoplasma falciparum infection, microscopy is very simple. You can get some pus material, then you can make the smear, and directly you can observe after staining. But if it is the causes of the histoplasmosis in case of the dog or cat, in that case, the sampling is not easy if the animal is alive. So try to get some of the swab sample, then the nasal swab, oral swab, and if the animal is dead, always better option to get some lymph nodes. Then make the smear, and we can stain by Giemsa or Wright's method, and to check the lymph and observe the organisms under microscope. So this is the intracellular pathogen, whatever the direction is given, and this is the enlarged view intracellular pathogen Histoplasma capsulatum as well as the falciparum. Cultural examination is always a better and the best option, means if you can grow in the laboratory. But for this purpose, the organism should be inoculated in the brain-heart infusion medium, which should accompany with two antimicrobial, one is cyclohexamide, one is chloramphenicol. These two are antibacterial agent. Why should we add? Because we may get certain bacteria also at the time of collection of the sample. So the bacteria should be killed. Bacteria should be killed first using the antibacterial agent. And then our plate should be incubated in the room temperature as well as the 37 degree. Room temperature means you want to see the mold growth, and 37 degree means you want to see the yeast growth. So in both the cases, the organism grows well. Now this is, look at this picture. These are all leukocyte which is already filled with the Histoplasma capsulatum organism, though it is intracellular pathogen. Other than this cultural examination, there are pathogenicity tests can be done. Certain serological tests like complement fixation test as well as allergic tests are recommended. So this is the story about the histoplasmosis. Then I will cover one more disease for today. This is known as blastomycosis. So blastomycosis in animals, causative agent is the Blastomyces dermatitidis. Once again, it is another dimorphic fungi, but this is not intracellular organism. What does it cause? It causes a granulomatous and suppurative disease in various animals as well as human. So suppurative means it can cause pus formation, abscess formation. So generally, it start the disease with a disseminate to the other organs and also to the skin. And among the animals, just like the histoplasmosis, there also dogs are more susceptible. This same disease, the blastomycosis, there are many names. This is also known as Gilchrist's disease because of with the honor to the person who discovered the organism first, North American blastomycosis, or the Chicago disease. It is location specific because the disease was first discovered in North America, Chicago. So from there, the name appears. Similar to the histoplasmosis infection, in case of the Blastomyces dermatitidis also, they exist in the soil as saprophyte. Both Histoplasma capsulatum, Blastomyces dermatitidis, both of the organisms, they appear in the soil. So they appear into the environment. The human being and animals, they get infected or they get an organism by inhalation of the conidia from colonies of the molds, which used to grow as saprophyte in the soil or in other substrate. Means in the soil, fungi is already grown up. So they already sprayed or they remove the spores, which is whenever accidentally we are in a place where number of spores are more of this organism, you can inhale it, or sometimes accidentally you can ingest it. So that then blastomycosis can start into the host. These organisms not transmitted from individual to individual or from animal to human, but each individual or animal apparently acquires the infection independently and directly from the nature. Okay, so that is a very important part. From other host directly from the nature. Clinically, the disease, it shows different kind of symptoms depending upon the tissue involved or organ involved. Depending upon the tissue or organ involved, the symptoms might be different. Generally, pyrexia means fever will be there. There is debility, weight loss. There may be cough, dyspnea, cutaneous lesions. So few of the lesions might be overlapping or very much common. Then we can see there is involvement of the lung and skin. This is very frequent. After that, whenever you are having one history of cough and dyspnea, then cutaneous lesions, immediately you should be alert about the possibility of blastomycosis. Means the animal shows long-term cough, dyspnea, then cutaneous lesions are appearing. Then all the vet should be alert regarding the possibility of blastomycosis. Here also our eye also infected, that causes the ocular lesion, many of which can progress and it causes blindness. Joints may be swollen, testicles may be swollen, lymph glands may be swollen. So there are different kind of appearance. And if the lymph glands appear swollen and appear affected, then they may be draining times, they rupture and the pus oozes out. Once the animal joint is affected, they may show the lameness and incoordination in the movement. Obviously, because of the joint infection, lameness is obvious. Another disease also, when we compare with this blastomycosis, it is known as paracoccidioidomycosis. Almost similar kind of symptom, but the causative agent is Paracoccidioides brasiliensis, and the disease is known as South American blastomycosis. Blastomyces dermatitidis infection, it is North American blastomycosis. And Paracoccidioides brasiliensis infection, it causes similar kind of symptoms, infection. It is a South American blastomycosis. Let's start. Every time we talk same thing like we should understand the history of the disease as well as the clinical symptoms. Then it comes to the direct microscopy. Microscopy is always easy to do it at the first line of diagnosis. So what should we do? We need to collect the body fluid as well as pus. Then that should be examined without any staining. And light should be subdued, means minimize the light. Then we can observe the fungal cell. Look at these cells. Here, these cells, this is the yeast cell, which is having a very thick layer outside, a thick layer outside, it can be observed. Now, if you are getting pus, the pus needs to be diluted because pus is too thick to observe. It should be diluted with water or hydroxide. Then, if it is dense or mucinous, after that, we can use the staining technique. After that staining technique, we can find it out the presence of the organism. Microscopically, when you observe under the microscope, the organism appears in the lesions free or in macrophages. Within the macrophage, look at this. Within the macrophage also it is possible, or it may be free. How it will look like? It's spherical, a spherical ball-like characteristics, sharply defined wall, sufficiently thickness to give a doubly contour. Means it looks like a double layer thickness. If we stain them with hematoxylin and eosin, the protoplasm is usually very prominent, appears granular, and generally pulled away from the cell wall. That then leave a clear space. When inside, it gives a clear space. Now the single budding cells are characteristic lesion with a daughter cell. When single budding cell. Next, we can demonstrate the germ tube formation. Germ tube formation is specific for which fungi? So far we read. Can anyone talk about germ tube formation? We have discussed earlier also. Which fungi also produce germ tube? Anyone? I think all are online. Everyone is online.
Yes, sir.
Fine. Can you mention about any other fungus? Already you have discussed which forms germ tube. And it is an yeast, not a mold. Which fungi also form germ tube? Today I am talking about the germ tube formation by blastomyces. But another I already discussed. No one? It indicates no one is reading at all. Absolutely not reading. What is the plan? Will you try to do in the last moment? Can anyone say the plan? Exam may be announced. Yes, great, Candida. Whether you have seen or not seen, Candida point of time, because then you will be in trouble. To cheat, then it is you are cheating yourself. That we can make it online exam, we can Google and write. That is different topic, because cheating will be, you will be simply destroying yourself. So all of you, you are at home, you are doing well, you are taking course fine. You understand you are away from the college, but still you have enough time. So take care of yourself, please. I'm not talking about to take care of the others, your teachers or the college. Take care of yourself. So just like the Candida albicans, as she has rightly mentioned, Candida albicans forms germ tube. How does it form? In which condition Candida albicans form a germ tube? Can you please? In which condition Candida albicans form germ tube? Any one of you are trying for it? All right. When we incubate in rabbit plasma, suppose you have small quantity of rabbit plasma Then we inoculate candida into the plasma and then incubate. In presence of rabbit plasma, candida can form small long tube. Suppose example here we have seen a tube like structure. This is not a germ tube. Same story hepatitis also, but in this case the germ tube formation, how it can do? It can be done. Suppose you have a colony of histoplasma, then we need to ring a just petroleum, okay, and then top with a cover slip. In this case, in case of candida, it was rabbit plasma, but here in presence of petroleum, and if we cover with a cover slip and incubate at room temperature, within few hours, this cell also forms germ tube formation. So this is the peculiar properties. By this, we can also identify. Cultural examination, as I said, it is always gold standard because cultural examination, let me show here, it is always a gold standard, means isolation and identification of the organism in the laboratory, it confirms the disease. If we can isolate the organism from the clinical case in the laboratory, then it is assured that pathogen is identified. So the organism, what we will do? Clinical material, it should be inoculated into the media, but once again it should contain cyclohexamide and chloramphenicol. These two antibiotics, my dear, please try to remember, cyclohexamide and chloramphenicol. These are two important antibiotics that should be mixed with the media for fungal growth. What for? Because these antibiotics inhibit the bacterial growth so that fungi can grow easily. Because fungi are very slow growing. Bacteria are very fast growing. If we allow the bacteria to grow, then what will happen? The entire plate will be covered with bacteria. Then fungus will not get an opportunity to grow. Bacterial growth, this media should be incorporated with cyclohexamide and chloramphenicol. So once after inoculation, then it should be incubated in both room temperature as well as the 37 degrees centigrade. But incubation should be minimum 10 to 14 days because a colony of blastomyces, it appears only after 10 to 14 days. Once growth is there, then we can check the microscopic observation. What we can see, the cells will be identical, which is found into the tissue. However, a great tendency toward multiple budding occurs in vitro than in vivo. So other than that, pathogenicity test is possible. Pathogenicity test, we need a mice. In mice, intraperitoneal injection of heavy saline suspension of the inject, the mice will show the clinical infestation. Serological tests are available like complement fixation test, agar-gel immunodiffusion test, ELISA, it is possible. One more test is also there, it is known as allergic test. Allergic test can be done by injecting blastomycin. Blastomycin means it is an allergen which is prepared from Blastomyces dermatitidis pathogen and that injects into the patient. If the patient shows the allergic reaction, it means they are positive for that infection. So by that way, we can blastomycosis. All right. So only these two diseases today I kept for you. Then next day we can continue two more diseases. So now, what about the slides or the presentation I have made? If you have a questions, please come forward.
Sir,
Yeah, please.
so when you were asking about germ tube formation,
Yeah.
you said like yeast form, but Candida albicans is polymorphic, right?
No. Candida albicans, it is a yeast-like fungi, okay? Because their appearance is generally unicellular. unicellular single cell organism. Mold means they are a multicellular organism. This is Candida is termed as a yeast-like because their tendency is to look like yeast. But sometimes it appears as a mold. Then some of the organisms we said it is dimorphic, yeast, mold, yeast-like and dimorphic. So Candida is yeast-like, not a typical yeast cell. Is it okay?
Okay, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
I think still you are not satisfied. Is it whether it was your question or something else?
No, sir. I don't know,
Yeah.
but in my notes I had written that it is polymorphic. So
Polymorphic, what polymorphic means, yeast look thing, suppose if you draw one yeast in your notebook, you will draw like one spherical cell with one nucleus. Am I right?
yes.
But Candida, in nature, it appears like a different type of phase. Sometimes you can find a tubular shape, sometimes like one small singular cell. That's why it is polymorphic. So basically, Candida is classified as a yeast-like fungi, means they like to be like an yeast, not like a mold, but it is not a typical yeast. Any more questions from anyone?
Thank you, sir.
Welcome.